you help a client who is dealing with issues around procrastination and not feeling good enough, or overthinking or overwhelm, people pleasing? How do you help people with these issues if you don't have training in therapy? Well, first of all, I want you to know these are normal everyday issues. Unless someone is dealing with deep clinical depression, out of control anxiety, these are everyday issues. And normal everyday issues do not require therapy training. So you might be saying, well, people talk about all the things that are happening and what they're thinking in their relationships and how it's impacting their day to day life. How do I talk to them about that? When you are a hypnotist, it is not your job to take them through analyzing what's happening. Now, I do root cause work. So you might be saying, how do you do root cause work if you're not talking about those things? My clients sometimes need to tell a story. The one thing so many people need is for someone to listen without judging what they're saying and without trying to fix the problem. Because I can guarantee you, if you're doing hypnosis, they've had a lot of people in their life who've tried to help them to fix the problem. They've tried to fix the problem themselves, because people typically come to a hypnotist as a means of last resort. They've done everything else. They've done the coaching, they've done the therapy, probably. They've had friends that they've tried to work things through with, and they find themselves in the same place. I mean, sometimes the clients had hypnosis before and they're like, oh, I know this works. I'm down with this. But what they need is someone to listen and bear witness. Now, it does not matter, not one bit, whether you agree with the client, whether you believe their assumptions are correct. Their assumptions may be completely opposite of yours. You may see something they don't. It's not your place as a hypnotist to bring them around to that. The client, in whatever place they are in, whatever experiences they've had in the past, the thoughts, the work they've done up to that point to work through the issue, whatever it is they're feeling in that moment, their feelings are valid. Their feelings may be based on a misperception or a misunderstanding, but their feelings are valid. So what most people need is someone to listen to them and say, you know what? I can see why you feel that way. I want you to know that what you're feeling is valid, because all that matters is their perception of the situation and how that perception created that feeling. If you had that perception, you would have the same feelings, right? So they need that validation. Now, not every client needs to come in and pour out their soul and be heard. Now, for me personally, sometimes I will ask questions, and it's just because I have thousands of hours of experience. There are certain patterns I've seen in people. I can spot these patterns. And so sometimes I'll see things and I will specifically ask sometimes, it's probably completely unrelated to this, but just in case something were to just like come up out of nowhere, when you were growing up, like, were you ever bullied at school? Or, was there a lot of stress in the home? This is a very good way to ask it. Was there a lot of stress in the home when you were growing up? And if they say yes, say, can you just tell me a little bit about what that's about? And you might uncover that there was an alcoholic parent, or maybe there was financial distress and both parents worked two jobs that were latchkey kids, or maybe your client was healthy, but their sibling was very ill and it demanded all of the parents' time and they were in hospital. So, the client was always staying with grandma or an aunt because the parents were either working or in the hospital with a sibling, things like that. It gives you some context. Are you going to allow those things to dictate what you do in your hypnosis? Absolutely not. They're context for you. What you do want to know is what brought you here today? Like what's going on? What would you like the results of our session to be like? What are the benefits of getting rid of, changing, shifting this thing that you want to address? What are the benefits of doing that? Well, when do you think this problem started? Like if you looked back, like where do you think it all started? That's an important thing. And what have you done other than coming here today? What have you done in an attempt to resolve this? And how did those things work? Once you have that information, you can then ask them, well, are there certain situations or things that make it better or worse? And so now you have a layout for something that may trigger the problem, for something that amplifies the problem, something that takes the pressure off the problem, and you have an idea around what was the symptom producing event. Now, symptom producing event, let's say someone started, having a sugar, we're going to call it addiction, but intense sugar cravings every evening. They just want to have the pint of Ben and Jerry's, or, maybe they'll be doing great. And if they get extremely stressed and their boss drives them crazy, and this is a true story, their boss berates them in front of everyone. So they go to Sam's and they buy the box, the vending machine size box of 36 Snickers. They buy the box of Snickers and eat them all in the parking lot. When do you think that problem started? And they tell you, well, they may have been 26 years old, and it could have been right after their fiance stood them up at the altar. So what do? They go to the reception hall and they're binging champagne and wedding cake. And then it's just downhill from there, right? Getting jilted or stood up by the fiance did not cause the problem. What it did was it took something that was already there and it amplified it to the point that the mind is now needing to compensate all the time. It's needing to cope. It's wanting to distract away from the feeling. The feeling was always there, just not to that degree. So you want to know when that symptom producing event was and share with the client, well, this is kind of when it started, but all of these other events are also causing it, right? You get into stressful situations at work, or when you're driving home in traffic, or you and your sister have an argument and you do this, right? I'm using that as an example right now because when you're doing root cause work, many times people believe the root cause has to be a trauma. And it does not have to be, especially in the case of people eating sweets and treats, because food is tied to love and connection and pleasure and positive memories. We have the feeling that caused the frustration, right? We can follow that back, but there's a good chance that when we follow the feeling that has everything to do with wanting to have the Ben and Jerry's, that feeling is going to be a positive feeling. They're looking for connection. They're looking for connection. And then you end up at this time when they're 10 years old and it was summer, and I don't know, say mom went back to school. So 10-year-old is staying with the grandparents all summer and they love spending time with their grandparents. But one day, grandpa said, hey, let's go get ice cream. There's a new ice cream shop in town. And grandpa takes them to the ice cream shop. and they have ice cream with grandpa. Now they love spending time with grandpa, but in that moment, the mind attaches the pleasure, the happiness, the feeling full, the connection to the ice cream. Didn't connect it to the idea that grandpa took you on this special trip. It connects it to the ice cream. So now when you enter a situation that's stressful and you want to feel good and happy and connected and like you belong and like you matter, you want a pint of Ben& Jerry's. So that's really all we need to know from a client. They may tell us their whole life story. We may need to give them space to tell their story. They might need for someone to hear it, but to do effective hypnosis, we don't need that at all. We don't need that because we don't know the cause of what happened. The client doesn't know the cause of what happened. We don't know the cause of what happened. The client thinks they know the cause of what happened, but it's not. It's not. It's the symptom. It's what triggered the symptom. It's not the cause. So this is why you don't need therapy. You don't need to know anything about therapy. You just need to know how to get people to connect with their feelings, follow the feelings back, and ask them 5 very important questions. And I'm going to come in on the next video and I'm going to tell you about those questions that will make the difference and just reinforce why you don't need to know anything about therapy to help normal, everyday people with normal, everyday problems using hypnosis.